Nothing, I suppose, is more redneck than a fake redneck, somebody who wants to be a redneck, somebody who aspires to be a redneck. Well, whatever happened, whether it was rednecks or these sort of revolting imitators, I got worked over real badly by a gang who sees trumped up loyalty issues as grounds to ruin a career man's life. And because I was attacked when I was very young, and a divider was put in neurologically between my past and my present, there's sort of interwoven connections of things that dovetail into each other a little disjointedly because, after all, physiologically, I'm subject to extremely painful contortions from the injury. It goes through my nervous system, all through my body. But if you look, for example, at this man who's up here, he's St. Louis Post Dispatch. That's probably when he was at the Miami Herald. It's a newspaper man. It's my granddad. Yeah, that's my granddad. Yeah. Why am I talking about my granddad with you? Trying to figure it out. Because when I was a kid, my daddy discussed Hiroshima with me, and I wondered, what they angry about it. But he said it was all settled. There was a peace treaty, and people have grown wiser. So I believe them. I mean, my granddaddy was exceptional human being. So was my father. And the people that they knew seemed like on the level. And I thought there must be lots of guys like this. The whole town, the whole city, the whole world must be filled with these great, open, humorous, beautiful men. So everything's going to be fine, la di da. I didn't really think about myself, campaigning for attention or loyalty. I just was happy to be alive among such a cheerful group of people. Now, I've never taken a course on, I mean, I didn't think of myself as privileged. I used to hear stories about, I met my great grandmother. She was my friend. She was covered wagon lady, pioneer. I knew Dobby was a war hero, but there were lots of war heroes. Um, I never took a course in nativism thinking, or I mean, I took some courses in racism and stuff. So I didn't. I mean, the people who tortured me were very right-wing, lunatic, army, racist, Nam veteran types, and they had some sort of weird black cadre who was, working with them on their group project. And they made it clear they thought of me as a traitor to whatever. I sort of was dislocated by the violence. And when I found my way down to Claremont, I was sort of appalled that the Claremont Society for Continuous Education changed their name to American Society. I thought this was an international. I thought this was about the earth. I wanted to draw attention to Buckminster Fuller. And they protested all this, that. And I was like, so some British guy wants us to be identified as American. It's the whole shebang about nationalism. I should have realized that Flip was in it with Reagan shit, but I would. People said, well, I questioned Reagan because he was a demagogue. I knew what Adolf Hitler was. I know what personality cults are. And I knew that there was like an explosive, we're in the right and true and just coming out of the men who kidnapped and tortured me when I mentioned Reagan in the newspapers. So that just compounded the problem for me. And then the University of Pittsburgh sided with them, and so did those horrible King Crimson persons. What's going with Putin sort of superimposes on that, even though it's now rather than then. Then it was Ken Gorbachev, Andropov, and stuff. He said something essential about Russia will be lost if they accommodate the rest of the world. I don't. I think they're just shy of accepting that Russia has its pleasures and novelties. You that other people can see good in Russia. They seem to be very shy of that idea. But anyway, no, no, yeah, there's a lot of things not going right with that crowd. But I don't really know what to say to all this stuff. Like my girlfriend I was in love with, I just figured she was going to try to help draw me closer. I mean, I was a dedicated poet. It wasn't like I was non-artistic. Plus, there are people who I adored. And the frat boys who were robbing me and humiliating me and so forth were all saying I was like chickenly or cowardly or something. But I was already in shell shock. I mean, that's the big fraud of the whole thing. It's like when I was less than 100 pounds, I was hit blindside by a violent mercenary, kidnapped and brutalized, slaughtering blows to the head over and over again. I mean, I'd already been kidnapped. When Clean Eastwood came around, I felt a little bit like some of the stuff was going to be attenuated to take me to the brink and back, for whatever reason he might have to do that. But, you know, guardian angel phenomenon. It's not nobody would dare to pick on me. It's that people have been advised that so many people have gotten it out of their system. What more do you want? Yeah. But the whole point is because they think life is a blasphemy. That's what Greg Carl's into. Death is the only answer, God, blah, blah, blah. And they're ruining the planet. They can't separate in their mind social obligation from their cult of absolute conviction. That's why we separate church and state. It's not to make an atheist government. It's silly to think it was an atheist government. It's just silly. It's just to prevent madmen from blowing the horn of their religion and bossing other people and bringing us to a bad end over it. And we all really need each other to save the earth. That's obvious. So, but one of the things I think went on was that my father was charismatic and my mother was an English teacher. And I had exposure to people who, despite my dysfunctional condition, were gifted at um, appraisal in the English language. Martha Gellhorn, for example, sized up what I was saying, spun it to me, and said, "Why don't you make this as clear as you possibly can?" Subordinate clauses appeared in Robert Fripp's postcard to me. And I was deaf, so certain people felt like, well, just leave him alone. Maybe he'll find his way to some, you know, um, groove where he can quietly exist as a fellow member of the human race or something. And the kids who didn't like me were always telling their girlfriends, go sleep with him so I can beat him up. Because that's sort of Pittsburghese, you know, pimpology. So there was all that. And then we'll claim him and stuff because they could see that I had moments of lucidity. I mean, that's never been um, denied. I mean, even the brutal adult offenders who held me hostage and captive as a child used to write down things I said. I mean, it's arguable that all this illegal taping that went on was because people think I'm interesting. But, you know, it's ironic that the people who pushed themselves on me were saying that I was the pushy one. That still continues, you know. It's like a shotgun marriage to being a field slave of Japanese claim to widowdom, you know, which I dispute. It looks to me like John Lennon lied, pretended through Hollywood so he could pull this venture. But if you look at Ward up there, he's um, Midwesterner. He was a distinguished citizen of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, a man of the Ozarks. Great sense of humor. Quiet, not ribald with laughter. He didn't make you double over, but he was super winsome, always ready to smile, eager to find the upbeat, the hee haw in things. And my grandmother was also a distinguished citizen in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And they call me Ken, despite the fact of my instinctive reluctance to be regarded as Ken in Poplar Bluff because of the way that the people who regard me as Ken in Pittsburgh have battered me. And I don't want to start a feud either, you know. But I was one of the kids who grew up, you know, playing with firecrackers and laughing at the Red Bottoms tune. Blue Bottom. Uh, um, enjoying the fact that my grandmother knew the names of all of those birds. She could see them and point them out to me. Nobody knew I was partially blinded from battery because I didn't know how to tell anybody what had happened. So now it comes to supporting foreign adventures. I've never seen it in the same way that the um, Exxon euphoria for war things that were going on. What I thought it was hurting innocent people. They said, well, this was a fight, dog fight, and if you were there, you would have had to fight or you'd be killed, kill or be killed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't always look that way to me. But, um, I knew that there were reasons why a person would have to condition themselves, if necessary, to resist the evil. But when negotiations are considered a tool for deception to get behind somebody's back, that's a clear sign of evil. But when negotiations exist on any level of sincerity, they should be attended to. Equal sincerity. Yeah, so I'm not convinced that America is entirely innocent in poisoning the atmosphere around negotiations. And that's why the frat boys really hated me, was because even if that's true, they didn't want to hear it. What they wanted to hear was that you were loyal to them, you were going to watch their back and sing their praises. I mean, the problem with that line is that Kennedy used to do that. People who he disagreed with profoundly had earned their colors, and he would very sincerely presidentially commission them because that was his duty and his job. And look what they did, they killed him. And so he was disloyal to them. See, and what's the point with me, right? I'm deaf. I'm not legally. I mean, they say special operation of draftee, to make this buck private see the light. I'm deaf. I'm not eligible. I mean, I actually tried to enlist once, and he said, "Get out of here. You can't enlist because you're deaf. Just get out." Now I had to meet the ranking sway on top, the William S. Moorhead Building in Liberty Avenue, downtown Pittsburgh. What am I supposed to say? I remember telling Ann Gordon how hath no fury like an enlistee spur, and she thought that was the stupidest thing she'd ever heard. I was a stupid kid, I admit that. I've always been. It's one thing I take for granted is I'm a fuck up. I didn't say anything in fury. I just made a quip to him. That's the way it was like when they arrested me for armed robbery, I started singing, "They're only puppets." It's just my attitude barrier. Got to make light of some things. When it came to the damage that was done to me, I always tried to make light of it. But when I found out they'd hurt other people, that was a little bit much for me. When they started telling me that I was to blame for something that didn't even happen, that got me real boy mad. And meanwhile, they're stealing all the books from the Carnegie, and the Carnegie's defending them and accusing me of starting rumors about them. Boy, that John Lennon was one mysterious motherfucker. He could pull off some mighty heist for the Japanese widow that way. Boy, what a mighty heist he pulled. And they're not about to say the truth. They'll just say, okay, whatever happened with them $8 million worth of books, slap him on the hand and tell him, no, no, don't do that no more, Johnny Schumann. But no, don't encourage Queerball. Yeah, I consider myself relatively honest. I mean, I feel very guilty that one of the books I bought from the library got wet. I'm planning when I take it back to make sure to schedule an appointment so the damage can be appraised and I can settle with them right away. It's not because I was born that way. It's not because these furious moral impulses have made on me. It's just because at some point when I was about 18, I said to myself, the key to having a happy life, I would think, is to be trustworthy. And so you put your mind to it. Try to learn how to be something that's sometimes very challenging because it's harmless to be untrustworthy sometimes. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's harmless. All through the lockdown, I made sure to pay my rent, and they were lenient about that. But I made sure to do it anyway. It was just, you might think that sets a bad precedent for the people who are needy. I'm not going around telling them they should pay their rent. They have to have additional expenses and families. I don't have that responsibility and luxury. If I can make my rent, I do. I'm not going to use the changing laws as a loophole. Other people might. I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody either. It's just that it's the fabric of my thinking to try to be trustworthy. You know, and they say own up. What's to own up about? I was brutally tortured. So I don't really know what to say, I mean, the reason I was able to hitchhike from Pittsburgh to St. Louis was because I felt St. Louis was a second home. It was just a homing pitch, and I got picked up by a World War II veteran. It was sad that I couldn't hear his stories, but at the same time, he connected well enough with me. He bought me dinner and told me he had done a little bit of that himself when he was younger. That was the better of the rods. That was some nice. I remember pretty much all of them. Well, people, but no, it was just the natural thing for me to feel I could do because I'd been to St. Louis so many times. And as for the fearful quality of being on the highway after being kidnapped and tortured as a child, particularly, I was on my way to, you know, uh, connect with somebody who I'd been cheated of a chance to connect with in Pittsburgh, and I wasn't going to let them do that to me. This is somebody who I admired. So I got home too. And I came home by way of Philadelphia. Saw a girl who I knew from the governor's school and had some rough moments, I remember. In fact, I saw one of the counselors from the governor's school. And he was in a school bus and he recognized me in the middle of nowhere. He took me back to the campground. And I had a nice evening by the campfire with some um, campfire kits. So there were some good things that were going on. I think I was looking for a camp because one of the people I knew from high school had given me indications that I could find him at one of them, but I didn't. And I ended up getting back to Pittsburgh in one piece. But that's just one of the adventures that became sort of a bond between me and what friends I did have. They've said, Jimmy's sort of ironic. He's got this passionate creativity, but his reputation is broken. And it's not that I wouldn't put it past the people who were doing it to set me up with a romantic call girl. It's just I didn't think that the person I'd hitchhiked to St. Louis to see would do that. I didn't hitchhike to St. Louis to see him. I moved to Kansas. I stopped off to see some of my grandparents. However you want to interpret that. I prefer to change the story. I'll put it that way now that I know what he really is. So, um, I don't know what to say about any of that. You know, I'd like to think I would have done my duty against totalitarianism. But I can't see why I should feel that I was a coward for not wanting to pulverize innocent people other places as a vindication of totalitarianism, because they're more like us. Friendly fascism. It'd be nice if I could get these trip dudes off my back about that. They told me when I was upset about the girl who I met at the governor's school that there's more fish in the sea. Well, there's more fish in the sea. You don't have to deal with me. You don't have to forge the axe of your brainwash on the anvil of my head. Well, you have a narrative that we want and play off of. Is the idea, I guess. Well, what does Cersei Kennedy's murder gain you? Surely you don't think I'm going to knuckle under to something that obnoxious, deranged, surely. And they play off the it's an invention scenario for them. Oh, like the Kremlin in New York City, run by New York Times people. They say, well, you're inventing, and they make it a myth, a big ironclad storyline that I'm inventing. So then they tell anybody who feels like wreaking havoc, go find a weasel angle on his myth and spin it. Watch him chapter house. So you end up with all of these innocent people going under. And the brainiac of it actually publishes books called things like Grave Secrets. I mean, who wrote I Love Sarah Ann on my garage in 1966? That was his neighborhood. And they used like a sarin nerve agent on me. Now, I'm not saying Schmersh or, you know, the Stasi couldn't have had a hand in it. It was a Soviet Jewry neighborhood, but the people in Westmoreland County weren't Smersh. Mel Gibson isn't Smersh. He's a friend of Oliver Stone who goes off to meet with Putin in the public eye. So the Ouspensky Circle is some other kind of oligarchy tag team. And they're celebrating euphorically the money that they've scared back into fossil fuels by the parameter of the Ukraine, where some really great people were. I mean, I saw one Ukrainian interrogator. His brain was split. He liked his prisoner so much. He was stymied. How am I supposed to hate this man who I hate? So I'll show you what I did today, because maybe it'll help to get grounded in the reality of where we are right now. See, I point out that anything affecting physical health can affect mental health. And it's not just death and hunger that's at risk. People go into denial. They suffer survival's guilt, depression, suicidal ideations. They need psychological first aid. Climate change is real, so we need to change the climate of discussion. Denial is a mental health problem. I said, it's Earth Day. Why don't you learn one thing? Why you think the polar caps are warming 4 times the rate of the rest of the planet? How could there be wildfires in Siberia? Who ever heard of such a thing? Well, it's called albedo loss. There's your lesson for today. Results in atmospheric warming when ice and snow loss creates a darker surface absorbing sunlight rather than reflecting it back into space. So what you've heard of a feedback loop. The ground warms up because its darker ground is exposed when the albedo is diminished, which is the white surface of the ice and snow that reflects the sun into space. So white may not always make right, but sometimes it's nice to have some white. And they call me a devil whisperer. I'm immoral. They made that up. Not sure truth to it. I love Pope Francis. Every time somebody has said something I agree with through this whole dang thing, it has been Pope Francis. Oh, you're putting us down. You're in a position to move against us. It's not true. Nobody thinks I've never been confused. So I get sad sometimes. Somebody who really picked on me died, and I remembered the good in them, and it made me real sad. That doesn't always happen. I'm like anybody else. Sometimes I've become distanced from someone who I can't relate to. I just, but they're always trying to say it had something to do with me because I'm a devil worshiper. You see, I went home to my rich mama's shirt tail, and I contacted Sissy Spacek's vibration in media, and I reached across the divide into astral space and found the alien known as Carrie Mary Worth. And presto, I spread the garlic vespers that resulted in what? Euromania? I've never done anything to hurt somebody. So you're prepostering me. But they get away with prepostering me. And the more they preposter and get away with it, the more momentum they get from prepostering and get away with it. Oh, they love that word, momentum. So, I could say time's up, but I didn't want to make a video to begin with. I've been tired through this whole thing, super tired. Pin the tail on the donkey is what they say. Coulda. They are chief long list coulda. They're chief long list coulda. So now I'm supposed to play all reconcile tuning to all these people, right? I don't feel like playing reconcile tuning. And so they have an optical spectrode on anyone I love. How can I change that? You think I can hide who I love? So what's another way of going about all this? Um, I can't think of any other way to go about all this. It's just a straight game, you know. Hope you would hot. Oh, Camila Valieva. Well, I've had to deal with people who had uh, differences, even hostile differences in the United States. But I think it's strange that an invisible player in the global society scene, because Chinatown knows I love them. Not the Koreans know that I love them. Should be torn um, ideologically between two European sisters who are at odds. I mean, it looks like a parochial thing that they pulled. Fortunately for everyone, uh, occupied. So where does that leave me? Don't I want to condemn everybody for doing this to me? I have put my feelings into words about what happened. Like when the step family came big breastedly with their hubs to my basement and said, "We only do it for children." I could see that they were accusing me. Why didn't they sit down with me and explain some of the facts of life so that I didn't get embroiled in their adventure? Because they wanted to use me. So, they say, forgive and you will be forgiven, all this stuff. We could all use a lesson forbearance, which is a little different from forgiveness. It takes strength to be forbearant. Like that Russian kid who the Ukrainian guard was appalled at himself for feeling any forgiveness for. Maybe he needed to think about forbearance for because of the fact that the kid was at the mercy of things that he couldn't disentangle himself from. So when there's forbearance, there's a chance to change things for the better when people perform in a cooperating manner. But one of the films that the crowd, who were all older and wiser and more in tune with what they were going to pull, took me to, ends with a reformed guy going to see the warden and giving him the kiss off with a pistol. That's always Hollywood's answer. That's why I don't like Hollywood. Hollywood always has some grim twist that makes people think, oh, that's the way we should do it because it'll prove our point. What point are you trying to prove? You have to be careful, people. I sounded an alarm about the University of Pittsburgh. Everybody remembers. What's the nature of reality stuff? So, it's like a mockery. Enjoy. Now always saying, oh, you enjoy hurting other people. When do I enjoy hurting other people? You get it? Oh, well, sex is pleasure and that hurts the unborn. And you waited to tell me this until you could use me for that sort of thing. Nice of you. No, then the women don't agree. It's more efficient to say, I like to say. You can plumb the depths of the uncanny with someone else. But I advise our society to be watchful that they don't do this to somebody else. Of course, I didn't become infuriated because it was just me. Bystanders have been harmed by UW dialectical. Oh, they've thought it all out. Born probably. One of the things when it comes to liability is the issue injury that's not fatal but leaves trauma and survivor's guilt. There's going to be legal cautions that survivor's guilt is more than just an emotional condition. When negligence gets so bad that it can be pinpointed that it's a liability. So we're on the brink of that when it comes to the global climate change situation. No car for me. I'd rather talk to pedestrians. Earth is to be appreciated. We are born to be enthused by our lives, not to be despondent, depressed, and fatalistic. We're born to learn and enjoy learning, not to be hostile rivals and game theorists. And of course, the hardened have ways of proving idealism wrong. So we have to be on the lookout for that sort of attitude. It's one of the only things I agreed with and credited Barack Obama with when I paid attention to him that he said was that he was much like Jimmy Carter's speech about energy renewal. Barack Obama, he didn't use the word Malay. He didn't say spiritual Malay. That was Jimmy Carter. He said we must guard ourselves against cynicism. Yep, yep. We sure do. That's what we got to do. Guard yourselves against cynicism.